It started as a regular Monday morning. The sun was out, but the summer breeze meant that it wasn't too hot. Schools had just broken up for the holidays about a week or so earlier, which meant that it should have been another fun day in the sun. Instead, it was the beginning of the two worst days in Southport's history. I feel comfortable making a claim like that because I'm from Southport. I called it my home my whole life. I grew up in Churchtown, I went to school at Farnborough and Stanley. And it's a quiet town. It's somewhere where not a lot happens, and I think growing up, a lot of the tragedies were things that you read on the newspaper or saw on the telly rather than being at home. And I think that, seeing stuff like that, it all felt so far away. But those tragedies came to our doorstep on this regular Monday morning, where an armed attacker murdered 3 girls and injured 10 more at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. Then, while thousands paid tribute to these girls at a vigil, there were others, mostly not from the area, who poured in from across Merseyside to rub salt into the wounds of a mourning town.
In the immediate aftermath of the stabbing on the 29th of July, within hours there were outright lies being said. People call it misinformation and disinformation. These are euphemisms. These people were just telling outright lies about what was going on. And I think they do it for their own very peculiar political reasons. We saw in the day after the attack, the stabbing, we had one person in particular who was streaming to an online video channel, actively encouraging people to come to Southport for a rally.
You see in social media there was a lot of uproar, there was a lot of outcry, but I don't think anyone expected that extent of outcry that actually happened on that day. I personally believe it played a massive role because obviously, like we know, there was a lot of misinformation spread, and that caused a lot of uproar that I believe was unnecessary because it wasn't true at all.
My 2 youngest children went to holiday club this morning in Southport for a day of fun, only for a migrant to enter and murder/fatally wound multiple children. My kids are fine. They are shocked and in hysterics, but they are safe. My thoughts are with the other 30 kids and families that are suffering right now. If there's any time to close the borders completely, it's right now. Enough is enough. The anarchy which happened the following day was inspired hugely by posts like these, which were nothing more than untrue statements put on social media. In hindsight, the hundreds of claims like this should have been disregarded as nothing more than heat-of-the-moment accusations, but this post in particular was screenshotted and shared on other platforms, where it was viewed more than 2 million times according to the BBC. The consequence of this was the riots which took place on St Luke's Road, a street over from where the previous day's attack had happened. It started on the hill in the afternoon, where the rioters then made their way down the slope towards the mosque, leaving nothing but damage and destruction in their wake.
It went on until about 3:30 in the morning by the time the last helicopters went, so the riot police were pushing them down our end of the street.
We were confused why these people are here, why these people are, shouting slogans, which is horrible, and what do they want? So it was absolute confusion. But then, of course, you got hails of missiles thrown at us and fire bombs and stuff like that. So obviously we were terrified. We were stuck in here.
Just mindless thuggery, as far as we're concerned, yeah.
But then something heartwarming happened amongst the chaos. The next morning, hundreds of locals arrived to help clean up the devastation of the night before. Broken glass, bricks and other debris were picked up, scattered bins taken to their proper places, but what garnered the most attention was the fence to the mosque, which after being violently torn down, was rebuilt.
One day was absolutely horrid, and then the next day was absolutely beautiful because everybody came along. They wanted to support us, they wanted to help us, they wanted to throw kind words, they wanted to assure us that this is not in their name, which we understand. Obviously we know it's not in their names.
But yeah, that clean-up, by the time we got here at 8:30, to be honest, most of it was cleared up and done. The walls were being rebuilt, and that's what Southport's about. It's that community spirit.
And obviously everybody kind of got together in the first few days and weeks after it had happened, but then obviously life just carries on as normal then.
It's now been nearly a full year since the attacks and ensuing riots. After a wet autumn and cold winter, the flowers are starting to bloom again for spring, and the town of Southport is trying its best to move on. In the days following the attack, people around the town showed their solidarity by displaying ribbons, balloons and stuffed animals, which were sheltered by volunteers to prevent damage. Those teddies have since been donated to local schools, with a permanent memorial being under development.
There are discussions ongoing, both within Sefton Council and also I'm speaking to people in Parliament and speaking to government to see what we can do to fund something like that. What form that eventually takes is open to question, but I know that overwhelmingly what people have said to me and what I want to see as well is that it would be a positive memorial, something that looks to the future for Southport, something that points the way to our best days lying ahead of us, rather than turning into some sort of mausoleum, which is the last thing that we wanted to see the town become. We need to make sure that the town is well known in the future for our positive attributes.
The rioting also had a huge effect on the police, with over 50 injuries and a handful of officers not returning to work for months. The aftermath of the disturbances has changed a lot of the force.
Yeah, so I've met a lot of people that were personally affected by it and are injured and that kind of thing, and it's took its toll on a lot of colleagues of mine. It's been sad to see, and I know some actually haven't been out back on the frontline duties as of yet, which is never good when you're just coming to work and you want to go home safe to your families, is it? I think if you'd asked me on the day, I'd have probably said no, I'm fine, but I think watching that level of injury, cause I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was 54 officers injured, you always wonder, don't you, at what point could it be me or could it have been me? And I think it definitely played a part on most people's road. It'll always be in the back of people's minds.
As for the local Muslims, the trauma of the incident has brought their relationship between themselves and non-Muslims closer than ever. During Ramadan, Southport Mosque opened its doors to host an event for those curious about Islam to learn more about it during its holiest month. The main purpose of the event was for anyone to observe local Muslims breaking their fast, but also featured guest speakers who spoke at length about recovering from the violence last summer.
Of course, now it took a different turn when we after the attack and all the support that they gave us, and we thought we should open the doors for more people to come and to see what we do and how we pray and how we live our life in here. We will continue this, and I think we need to increase it as well in order to get rid of all this bigotry that is taking place outside.
Bigotry and fear are similar in a lot of ways because they both stem from a lack of understanding. Since July, local leaders have focused a lot of their efforts to reduce both, to try and make people feel comfortable in their own town again. I mentioned earlier that growing up, tragedy was something that existed on a page or a screen, but for young people now, the fear that they felt during the last summer will stay with them for the rest of their lives, which is why it's crucial to use the spirit of Southport to keep the people who live here unified.
We need to make sure that everybody approaches each other with respect and dignity. Now, it's not just the Muslim community by any stretch of the imagination, because in the immediate aftermath there were so many parents that came to me and said, I'm scared to let my young children out because psychologically they feel that it wouldn't be safe for them. That's something that we need to deal with. We need to make sure that people recognise that Southport is a safe town. It's just like everywhere else across the country, and the less people dwell overwhelmingly on the negative aspects of what happened, the more we can put our best face to the future here.
Some people decided that they will try to separate us from the community, which naturally they did not succeed. We're not a stranger. Some of us were born in Southport, so we always belong to Southport. Why don't you come and try to know us? Why don't you come and see if we're gonna invite you in, and we have a word, and if you got an issue, face us and have this issue with us. If you have a question, happy to answer you. If you want to know anything about us, happy to tell you what we do or what you know, what we're here for.
The positive response from the Southport community, the people who live here, the residents, it didn't surprise me because Southport people are some of the best in the world. Thank you is what I'd say to them because they were fantastic in the immediate aftermath of firstly the stabbings on the 29th and then the riot on the 30th.
The overarching moral of this story is a simple one. Humanity will always prevail, and while there are some dark days, the sun will always rise on a newer, brighter one ahead. This has been Tyler Rotheram. Thank you for watching.